It was a rainy night in downtown Chicago when Marcus Hayes, a young black lawyer fresh out of law school, was pulled over on his way home from a long day in court. He had just defended a teenager in a wrongful arrest case and won. The victory was bittersweet. He knew the system was still stacked against people who looked like him. As the flashing red and blue lights filled his rearview mirror, Marcus sighed, rolled down his window, and placed both hands on the steering wheel, the way every black man in America was taught to. Two white officers approached, their boots splashing through puddles. "Evening, sir," one said, his voice thick with authority. "You know why we stopped you?" "No, officer," Marcus replied calmly. "Was I speeding?" "License and registration," the other barked. Marcus complied without hesitation. He could feel their eyes scanning him, his tailored suit, his polished car, his confident tone, and it only made them more suspicious. "What's a guy like you driving a car like this?" one sneered. "You dealin'?" Marcus took a slow breath. "No, officer. I'm an attorney." The two men laughed out loud. "Right. And I'm the president," the taller one said. "Step out of the vehicle." Marcus hesitated, knowing what could happen if he moved too quickly or too slowly. He stepped out into the rain, keeping his hands visible. Within seconds, one officer was searching his car, the other patting him down. When they found his briefcase in the back seat, they opened it and dumped the contents: legal papers, case notes, a worn copy of the Constitution of the United States, onto the wet pavement. "Looks like some fancy paperwork," one mocked. "You write this stuff yourself?" "I told you," Marcus said quietly, rain dripping from his hair. "I'm a lawyer." The other officer smirked. "Sure, we'll see what the station says about that." They cuffed him right there on the sidewalk, in front of bystanders with phones out. He didn't resist. He just looked straight ahead, jaw tight, heart steady. At the station, the humiliation continued. They made him sit in a holding room for hours, ignoring his ID, his bar card, his repeated explanations. "You people love to pretend," one of them said, tossing his credentials on the table. "You really think you can just say you're a lawyer and we'll believe it?" Marcus said nothing. He'd learned long ago that silence could be its own kind of weapon. When they finally released him, after confirming through the system that he was in fact a practicing attorney, neither officer apologized. They just muttered something about mistaken identity and walked away laughing. Marcus picked up his soaked papers and left the station with one thought burning in his chest. "One day I'll see you again, but it'll be on my terms." That night, as he drove home under the dim city lights, the laughter of those cops still echoed in his mind. He didn't know it yet, but fate had already started setting the stage for the day when those same officers would walk into a courtroom and find him sitting in the judge's chair. The next morning, Marcus woke up with a pounding in his chest that wasn't fear anymore. It was fuel. He replayed every second of that night in his mind. The smirks, the cuffs, the rain-soaked papers, the words, "You people love to pretend." Every insult became a brick, and he was going to use them to build something unstoppable. He returned to work at the downtown Legal Aid Center, his eyes darker, more determined. His mentor, Judge Reynolds, one of the few black judges in Chicago, noticed immediately. "Rough night?" he asked, scanning Marcus's tired face. Marcus hesitated, then told him everything. Reynolds listened silently, his expression unreadable. When Marcus finished, the judge said quietly, "They thought they humiliated you. They don't know they just created a force." That day marked a shift. Marcus began taking every case personally, not out of anger, but purpose. He defended clients who'd been profiled, harassed, beaten, and silenced. He spoke with fire in courtrooms full of people who didn't expect someone like him to speak so precisely, so powerfully. Word spread fast through the city's legal circles. Marcus Hayes wasn't just good, he was fearless. He worked 16-hour days, skipped meals, lived out of case files. The very system that tried to break him became his battlefield. Police departments, prosecutors, even judges started recognizing his name. Some respected him, others resented him. But everyone remembered him. 2 years later, one of his biggest cases hit the headlines: Hayes vs. City of Chicago. Marcus sued the department for wrongful arrests tied to racial profiling. It was personal, though he never said that out loud. The same precinct that had humiliated him years before found itself under his cross-examination in federal court. When the verdict came in, a victory, The headlines read, Young Black Lawyer Exposes Systemic Racism. City to Pay $3.2 million Settlement. He didn't smile when the cameras flashed. He just said, Justice isn't revenge, it's correction. The case opened doors. He began teaching part-time at a law school, mentoring students from poor neighborhoods who thought success was something meant for others. He reminded them every day, you belong in every room they told you wasn't yours. By the time he turned 35, he'd argued before the appellate court, won national awards, and had his name whispered in political circles. One morning, Judge Reynolds called him into chambers. You ever think about wearing the robe yourself? He asked with a knowing grin. Marcus blinked. Me? A judge? Reynolds smiled. Why not? You've already got the heart for justice. Now get the seat for it. The idea lodged itself deep in Marcus's mind. The robe wasn't about power. It was about balance. It was about being the calm in the storm he'd fought through for years. So he applied. And when the nomination finally came through, he stood in front of the mirror, wearing the black robe for the first time, and thought about the boy who once stood in the rain in handcuffs. The journey had come a long way, but it wasn't finished, because soon those same officers who once mocked him would walk into his courtroom and face the kind of justice they'd never imagined. It was a gray Tuesday morning when Judge Marcus Hayes took his seat in courtroom 6B, the polished mahogany bench gleaming under soft light. The gold nameplate in front of him read, Honor Marcus J. Hayes. He still remembered the first time he'd seen a judge's robe, from the defendant's side of the room, wrists cuffed, rain dripping onto the cold tile floor. Now, the roles had reversed. The clerk handed him the docket for the day. A routine hearing, Your Honor, she said. Internal misconduct case involving 2 police officers. He nodded, scanning the names, and froze. Officer Daniel Rourke. Officer Kevin McAllister. The room seemed to tilt for a moment. Those names burned into his memory since that rainy night. The same voices that had mocked him, the same hands that had dragged him out of his car. He could almost hear them again. You really think you can just say you're a lawyer and we'll believe it? Marcus inhaled deeply, steadying himself. The years had taught him how to wear calm like armor. He straightened his robe, adjusted his tie, and said, Bring them in. The courtroom doors opened. 2 uniformed officers walked in, whispering to their attorney. Time had not been kind to them. The years showed in the gray at their temples, the stiffness in their movements. But their swagger was the same. They didn't even glance at the judge at first. To them, he was just another face in a robe. The clerk began reading the charges. Excessive force, abuse of authority, falsified reports. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. He listened, expression neutral, voice steady when he finally spoke. Officers, please step forward. When they did and finally looked up at him, silence fell. Rourke blinked. McAllister's mouth fell slightly open. A flash of recognition hit both of them like a jolt. Marcus met their eyes. No anger, no satisfaction, just a deep, unwavering composure. Do you recognize me? He asked quietly. They exchanged nervous glances. Rourke cleared his throat. Your Honor, I'm not sure. Marcus leaned forward just slightly. Maybe this will help. Rainy night, black sedan, briefcase full of legal papers you tossed into the street. Their faces drained of color. The room was still. Even the air seemed to pause. McAllister swallowed hard. We were just doing our job, he stammered. Were you? Marcus said softly. Because that night, you didn't just arrest a man. You tried to strip him of dignity. You mocked him for daring to exist where you thought he didn't belong. Rourke shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, if we'd known... Marcus raised a hand, silencing him. That's the point. You didn't care to know, because you'd already decided who I was before you asked. He let the silence linger, heavy but not cruel. But today isn't about me. It's about accountability. And justice doesn't play favorites, not even when karma does. The defense attorney started to speak, but Marcus's gavel struck once, firm, final, controlled. Proceed with testimony, he ordered, his tone even, his power absolute. As the hearing continued, Marcus didn't look at them as enemies. He saw them for what they were, proof that the system he'd fought to change was finally being held to its own rules. The irony of fate was sharp, but he didn't smile. He didn't need to. Justice didn't need vengeance. It just needed a chance to speak, and today it spoke through him. When the final day of the hearing arrived, the courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back wall, scribbling notes, cameras flashing every few minutes. The story, two officers facing misconduct charges, had already made headlines. What no one knew yet was the deeper, quieter truth behind the man in the robe. Judge Marcus Hayes entered, every movement precise, every word deliberate. His calm presence filled the room like gravity. The two officers sat stiffly at the defense table, their lawyer whispering frantically. Neither of them had slept much. They knew this wasn't just another case. Marcus looked over the files once more. Every line told a familiar story. Intimidation, abuse of power, falsified evidence. He had seen too many lives destroyed by these patterns. But today, justice had a face. His. He tapped the gavel once. Court is now in session. The prosecutor delivered the final summary, a sharp, unrelenting recount of the officer's actions. When she finished, Marcus turned his gaze toward the defense. Officers Rourke and McAllister, do you wish to make a statement before sentencing? Rourke stood, his hands trembling slightly. Your Honor, we made mistakes. We were under pressure. Marcus raised a hand, stopping him gently. Pressure does not excuse prejudice, he said, voice steady. You didn't act out of fear. You acted out of assumption. You saw color and made it character. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of pens scratching. Marcus continued, his tone neither cruel nor soft. It was balanced, judicial, final. You didn't just violate policy. You violated trust, the foundation of every badge, every oath, every right you swore to uphold. And that betrayal cuts deeper than any crime you arrested. McAllister's eyes lowered. The weight of the words hung heavy. Marcus looked at them both and added, 10 years ago, I sat in one of your precincts. You didn't see me then. You saw your version of me. And maybe today, for the first time, you finally see the man who was standing there all along. The crowd shifted, a quiet gasp, a ripple of recognition spreading through the room. The reporters caught every word. He took a deep breath. This court sentences you both to 3 years of suspended service, mandatory civil rights training, and 500 hours of community service in the neighborhoods you once patrolled. You will rebuild trust where you helped break it. You will serve the people you failed, under their eyes this time. His gavel struck once, sharp, decisive. The verdict was done. As the bailiffs led the officers out, Marcus sat back in silence. He didn't feel triumph, only peace. The boy who once stood in the rain had finally stood tall in the storm. After the courtroom emptied, a young law student approached him, a black woman, nervous but glowing with admiration. Sir, she said softly, I want to be a judge one day, too. Marcus smiled for the first time that day. Then promise me one thing, he said. When the world doubts you, don't argue. Just let your work make them listen. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Rain beginning to fall once more, soft and rhythmic against the courthouse steps. Marcus looked up, feeling the drops on his skin. The same rain, a different man. Justice had come full circle. Weeks passed, but the echo of that verdict didn't fade. The case spread across news outlets and law journals, not just as another story of accountability, but as a turning point. For once, the conversation wasn't about punishment. It was about redemption, about what justice should look like when guided by empathy instead of ego. Marcus never sought the spotlight, yet it found him anyway. Invitations poured in. Universities wanted him to speak, community leaders wanted his advice, and law students lined up after lectures just to shake his hand. The phrase Judge Hayes Justice became shorthand for rulings that were fair, firm, and deeply human. But Marcus's real focus wasn't fame, it was change. He launched a mentorship initiative called The Second Gavel. pairing young law students from marginalized backgrounds with experienced judges and attorneys. He wanted every student who'd been told, "You don't belong," to have proof that they did. The first day of the program, he looked at the crowd of hopeful faces, black, Latino, Asian, white, and said, "Justice isn't blind. It just needs new eyes." His mother sat in the front row that day, wearing her Sunday hat and smiling with quiet pride. She'd lived long enough to see the boy who once studied under a flickering streetlight become a voice for a generation. "You turned your pain into purpose," she told him afterward. "That's what real power looks like." Months later, Marcus received a letter in the mail. The sender was Ms. Wilson, his old high school teacher. Inside was a handwritten note. "Judge Hayes, I watched your hearing on TV. I realized how wrong I was. Not just about you, but about so many students I dismissed. You showed the world what I never learned to see. Thank you for teaching me even now. Elaine Wilson." He read the letter twice, then folded it gently and placed it in his desk drawer, beside an old, water-stained copy of the Constitution, the one that had fallen into the street that night years ago. That weekend, Marcus walked through his old neighborhood. Kids played basketball on cracked pavement, their laughter echoing through the streets. One boy called out, "Hey, Judge Hayes, my mom says you used to live here." Marcus grinned. "That's right. And you know what? That means you can do anything I did, and more." As he walked away, the sun dipped low behind the city skyline, golden light reflecting off the courthouse dome in the distance. Marcus paused to look back, at the streets, the faces, the journey that had started in pain and ended in purpose. He had fought the system, changed it, and now was shaping those who would build it better. Justice wasn't just served, it was reborn.